Hello and welcome, Deshaun Jones. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are so excited to talk to you. So for any of you who don't know, Deshaun Jones is a Detroit-based saxophonist and composer who has a breadth of experience touring and working with incredible artists all across the world. So the first thing I guess I'd like to ask you is if you could give an introduction on yourself and kind of let the viewers know who you are. What's your role in the industry and how did you start?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me be a part of the podcast. My name is Deshaun Jones, saxophonist by trade, but I've kind of made a name for myself more so as an arranger and producer in some respects. I would say that my musical upbringing would have to start with Marcus Belgrave, the late great Marcus Belgrave, trumpeter extraordinaire, ambassador to the rest of the world for what the best of Detroit has to offer in terms of musicianship and class. And I've been fortunate to work with a lot of great musicians, a lot of great artists through the years, spanning gospel with the Clark sisters and Kierra Sheard, who recently got nominated for a Grammy this year for the best gospel album. So shout out to Key. I've worked with Stevie Wonder, worked recently with Snoop Dogg as an arranger. And then I'm an artist in my own right. So I compose. I do a lot of different styles of music from techno, jazz, drum and bass, classical, like you name it. If it's music, chances are I've engaged with it in some capacity. So I've been really fortunate to have kind of a mixed bag of experiences over the last 20 years or so. And now we're kind of like in this new age of digital streaming and exploring that. So one of the things that I started some years back, but it's kind of more integral these days is a music label. So I have my own label and a publishing company, Nomadic Records. So I'm kind of doing things from a more administrative aspect these days, because there's no shows and, the pandemic has kind of affected us all in a way where we can't, come together. Music is a very social sort of industry, you know what I'm saying? Without crowds gathering together, you can't really perform for anyone, right? So, but you can still reach people with your music. And it's been very interesting to navigate this new space with, Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and Bandcamp and all these really wonderful initiatives that have been kind of set forth to help musicians and your visual and audio artists.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, what was it like working with big artists like Stevie Wonder and Shaka Khan and Snoop Dogg?
Well, I would say probably the biggest artist I've ever worked with was Stevie Wonder, and it was for a New Year's Eve in Las Vegas. It was an intimate crowd of 10,000 people, and I was like, okay. And the thing about that show was I was standing right next to Stevie the whole gig. Like he's center stage, and then the horn section was like literally stage right. And we're literally standing right next to him. So uh, when you talk about pressure, because he knows he can hear everything, but that was an exhilarating experience for me and something I've never forgotten, will never forget. And I think when you're in Detroit and you're in cities like Chicago and like the Midwest breeds a lot of great musicians. There's a lot of unsung heroes out here, but I feel like if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Like they said about New York, but I feel like if you can play for a Detroit or Chicago crowd, you'll be fine. You can make it through anything. So, but probably the best musical experience of my career has been working with Mad Mike Banks and Underground Resistance. That has been the larger part of my career for the last 15 years or so. And playing Montreux Jazz Festival or playing for, tens of thousands of people on the side of a mountain in Japan, like you name it, we've kind of covered a lot of ground. So that gave me the opportunity to see the world, 3-4 times over, meet so many wonderful people, hear some interesting stories, and make some crazy music. because high-tech jazz, techno, it's very different. It's a different animal when you start dealing with machines making music, you know what I'm saying? So as a saxophonist, trying to find a way to create like a hybrid between the technology and an organic instrument like saxophone was it's still a lifelong experiment in a lot of ways. But needless to say, no one experience was like the moment for me. It's just been the collection of all of them that has kind of got me to where I am today.
I really like how you are able to incorporate so many different genres into your music and that you give value to all different genres. Can we jump back for a second to focus on your jazz playing? And maybe young musicians don't always know how to get into jazz if they're not introduced through it through school. Can you talk a little bit about when you were growing up, getting into jazz, and how you did that, and maybe how young musicians, where they can start to listen to that genre of music, where they should start to study about it if they're not in school?
Well, when I was coming up, we didn't really have the internet, which is crazy that I can say it. We didn't have the internet as robust and widely available as we do today. So I remember AOL used to send you these little CD-ROMs and you get 90 minutes of internet. You know what I'm saying? And so
I remember that. I don't think Maddie remembers that, but I remember that.
Yo, so like we're dating ourselves, right? So that's how I got into music though. I started exploring, and I had Encarta, like encyclopedia, like another CD-ROM, right? A little disc. And it had these little sound clips, like 30-second sound bites. And I got exposed to Chet Baker. I got exposed to Miles Davis. It's like his opening maybe 16 bars of a solo on Origin. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. Mm-hmm. So I was about maybe 12, 13 when I picked up the saxophone. And it was really just to emulate those 30-second clips. Fast forward to 2020, 2021, you got Spotify, YouTube, you got every resource. I mean, anything you want to find, you literally just type it in and it's there. So I think what's beautiful about this age is the wide access and availability to anything you want to know. If you want to learn just basic chord voicings, there's a 30-second video on YouTube that'll break it down for you, no problem. I think the key now is just for young people, do it because, you know, it's fun. Always, it has to be fun. Like if I don't make music and if I'm not having fun, I almost don't want to do it at all, even now, like as an adult. So for me, it was always a passion and an exploration of something that was almost like a game, really. Like when you listen to Chick Corea Got a Match for the first time, you're like, man, how did they do that? And you try to figure it out, and you find maybe 2 or 3 of your friends who are also interested in the music and try to tackle it. And I think that's what kind of kept me in the game more than anything, was like I had people my age, my peers, and it wasn't a lot of us. It was like maybe 3 guys over here, 4 guys over there, whatever. And we would come together and try to figure the music out. And then we would celebrate the achievement of figuring it out. And like, yo, we can play Chick Corea Got a Match, or we can play 500 Miles High, or I don't know. We were like really into Chick Corea at a certain point.
Yeah, me too.
You got to find a mentor. You have to find somebody who can lead and guide you. So like, I was really fortunate to have some amazing mentors. I had Marcus Belgrave. I had Rodney Whitaker, you know, who's professor of jazz studies, director of jazz studies at Michigan State.
Wow.
Bob Hurst, I mean, legendary bassist. Every now and then I come in contact with Wynton Marsalis, you know, and he would drop some gems on me. It just like the whole community. I would say on a very personal note, I had somebody by the name of Solomon Parham, legendary Detroit trumpeter. I almost said saxophonist. I'm the saxophonist. He's a trumpeter, but he would like pull me aside and be like, hey, young gun, check this out. And he would like write down a pattern or something and be like, now shed this and bring it back to me in 2 weeks. And it would just be a simple line. It could have been a pattern of fourths or fifths, or he would turn me on to certain recordings, or go to different jazz venues. I would run to people like James Carter, tenor saxophonist extraordinaire. Having those kinds of people and that kind of community of mentors and peers is what will basically get you into a position of having a career in music, not because you just love music so much, but because it's a healthy community that fosters and nurtures a good environment for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
That's
And why is jazz important for young musicians, even if they're not planning on playing that genre? What should they know just about the approach to the music? How can they? Let me rephrase this, because you utilize so many different genres in your music. How do you apply jazz to those other genres, and why is it an important genre to know about?
Well, I think, once again, getting back to the information age, the more you explore, the more you start to find how deeply interconnected all of this stuff is. And you start to find out that jazz isn't so dissimilar from classical, isn't so dissimilar from trap, isn't so different from gospel, isn't so different from the blues and rock and everything. When you deal with Western music in particular, we only have 12 notes. Mm-hmm. When you deal with Western music in particular, you only have a handful of chord changes, and the vast majority of your chord changes are 2, 5, and 1. Basic, just standard. We're always working our way to the 5, and our 5 is always going to take us to the 1. So the wonderful thing about studying jazz is it literally unlocks the skeletal framework of how music functions. It might sound busy or whatever, but the reason it sounds that way is because you find quote unquote linear instruments, meaning non-chordal instruments that are expressing chord tones and the connection between those chord tones in real time. So like a piano can play 4 notes at once. A saxophonist can cover maybe, I don't know, in the same span of time, maybe like 6 notes, so running up and down these scales, like what it teaches you is the ability to have an organic musical conversation. And the deeper part of it, like when you go to college and you do music theory and oral skills and all those other things, is it teaches you how to understand the fundamental frameworks of Western music, because music is more expensive than the 12 tones we deal with, right? When you get into frequencies and harmonics and all that other stuff. But needless to say, it is a communal, not instrument, but a communal music that bridges the gap between all of them. Because honestly, if you can play, there's 2 genres in particular. Honestly, there's 3 genres in particular that I think if you become excellent at, you can translate those skill sets and be proficient in pretty much any genre of music. If you're proficient in classical music technically, that means that you can access any style of music. You can interpret any style of music. If you are technically proficient in jazz, it's the same thing. It's transitory. Now it just becomes a question of, well, what style are you playing in? Like let's stay within the idiom, and that's it. So that's either a reduction of skill set or an increase, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the skill sets there. And then the last is gospel. I think gospel musicians have the most inherent technique, demand for inherent technique, probably of any genre, because of the tempos that they play at, the harmonic complexities that they have to engage, and all the other stuff that comes with it, and the fact that it's most of it is learned by ear. So it's really teaching you like real-time music skills, whether it's learning how to navigate the changes from a number system or literally just using your ears and hearing when the key changes. I mean, so I'm a big fan of just studying all musics and not separating them by genre, because what you find is like, we only got 12 notes. We only have 12 keys, man. So why should we separate it by genre? There's cultural influence. And I think that's where the distinctions come in, like jazz being inherently American music. It's our American classical music, pioneered by, African Americans. Like, okay, cool. But it's no difference, 251 in, a song with Charlie Parker is going to be the same thing you find with Rachmaninoff. Like, it's the same thing.
Right.
I'm preaching.
That's
I'm sorry.
no, I love it because
That's
I could
great.
listen to you on. I could listen to you all day, man. You're articulating that so well, and that was an amazing answer. Thank you for dictating it that way.
I'm
Yeah,
passionate.
I'd like to ask. That's awesome. I'd like to ask more. So you work with musicians across all genres in plenty of different scenarios. So what does it take to be a successful band leader? What skills do you need to lead a group of people and make everything run smoothly?
In order to be, and this is kind of cliche, but in order to be a great leader, and I'm not asserting that I am, but I've been leading my band Nomadic for 10 years now. And we've toured everywhere, all over the US. We've toured, we've done Africa, we've played Asia, we've done all over Europe. What you have to do is you have to know how to communicate effectively. What you have to understand is honestly how to follow, man, and how to receive information, because music is, unless you're like a one-man band, a one-man show, the music can't be executed unless everybody in that band is on the same page, you know? And so I think being able to communicate effectively is the key. So when I say communicate, what are we really dealing with here? Well, perhaps it's actually writing the music out and making sure that the way that you're expressing your chords is clear to the pianist or the vibraphonist or whatever chordal instruments, your guitar is, making sure that like they understand the clarity of voicing, you know, because like you can just write E flat. I've seen guys write just like E flat on a chart and then expect you to interpret, well, is it an E flat half diminished? Is it a E flat minor 9? Is it a E flat major 7 sharp 5? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Like, what's happening? So I think being clear with the music you write starts there. I think being reasonable with like how you talk to people is key. Cause I mean, like the old school was like really direct. I'll put it that way. Very direct with what they wanted out of the music and very unapologetic about their delivery. I think that this generation is a bit more keen with just being direct, but also subtle, you know, because like you're still dealing with people who have feelings and they might be going through stuff. And so navigating those spaces and those relationships is really key. My band in particular can be a quartet. It could be a trio, probably at the very smallest, and probably at max would be like 11 guys. So that's a spaceship at that point. You know, when you're talking about performing a 90-minute show, 120-minute show, and getting 11 people to be on the same page. But you have to know how to follow. You have to be willing to defer to the other geniuses that are in the room, because when you make excellent music at a high level, chances are you're gonna have to enlist some genius caliber individuals who can hear just as good as you, who can play just as good as you, if not better. You know what I'm saying? So when they start to see other avenues, you got to be willing to take that information, because the goal should not be to suit one's ego or their personal sense of what the music should be, but the goal should be for all of us to come together and make the music as good as it can possibly be. And I think that's how teams win championships, man. Everybody buys in. And that's like on a corporate structure, that's in sports, and I think the same holds true in the arts and music.
Wow. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, you said you've traveled a lot. So on top of being a band leader and orchestrating the band itself, you've traveled all over the world. So I guess I want to ask, what are the most challenging aspects of going on tour? And maybe what are some things that are very rewarding about it?
Most challenging aspects of being on tour, I think it's the rigors of the schedule. There have been a lot of tours where you're on the flight for, I don't know, 8 hours, or like you fly to Australia. I forget how long that flight is. That's like what is 16 hour, 20. I don't know. It's long. But because of the time change, the time difference, typically when you land, you are like maybe 3 hours away from your performance time, right? So you get through the airport. Like one of the hardest airports I think to like navigate is probably like Charles de Gaulle. because it's such a big, airport in Paris. Like you can walk an hour to get from one terminal to the next. It's that massive, and then potentially miss your flight, which has also happened a few times, right? But the thing is the scheduling, I think, when everything is back to back and you don't get a lot of sleep, that's probably like one of the drawbacks. In my case, I have a family. So being away from my wife, being away from my children, that's the hardest part. Like FaceTime is not sufficient, you know what I'm saying, when you miss out on important events and stuff. So that for me, and I think for a lot of guys who have families or have kids or whatever, that's kind of tough to navigate. But I would say those two things aside, man, being able to present your passion in front of people all over the world is a gift. It is a privilege, and it is extremely rewarding. I've played everywhere. I mean, Africa, I've been in Tanzania. And if you know about Tanzania, that's like third world, man. It's crazy over there. Like no paved roads. Like it's crazy. But
what kind of shows were you doing there?
I was teaching and doing a arts partnership with an organization called Nafasi Art Space, which is in Dar es Salaam. And that was an amazing residency. And I was slated to come back again, but the pandemic. So yeah, but that was crazy. But then, like I said, you could be like in the mountains in Switzerland, playing for, the owner who passed away, rest his soul, but, playing for the owner of Macho Jazz Fest. You know what I'm saying? And you go in his house and he's got a vault. And this vault has every performance ever chronicled at the Macho Jazz Fest. And you look and one of the tapes says Miles Davis. And it's like, like it's a crazy experience. But I think the best part about it is the culture. You get a chance to experience different cultures. You get a chance to touch history, whether it be the pyramids, whether it's the Eiffel Tower, whether it's the Colosseum in Rome, or the Great Wall of China. Like climbing that wall is crazy. That's a workout. And I climbed it with one of my newer horns, which has some weight to it. So it was basically like climbing the Great Wall of China with a 50-pound bag on you. Brutal. But,
wow,
that's
cool.
a story, that's a cool story to tell, maybe the kids or the grandkids. But when you get to see things tangibly that you only read about in books, especially, being, a Black man, like I can tell my kids, like, hey, one day this could be you, and you'll go on and do so much more. Like, it's not just in the book. It's not just on the screen. Like, this is reality, man. It can be yours. So, traveling is rewarding. Being a musician and an artist and sharing and receiving art from other people is very much enriching. And hopefully we can all kind of get back to that. Because I hear you guys are in Calgary, right?
Yeah.
See, I've never been to Calgary, so I'm ready to hop on a plane or train or whatever I need to do and come and hang out with you guys, man.
Well, as soon as we can, let's get you up here. We'll set up a show.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Deshaun, you were born and raised in Detroit, is that right?
Yep, I've been here. I'm raising my family here, and my whole music career has been tied and centered directly with the city of Detroit. Very proud of that. And it's one of those things where when you look up and you start to do some research, you'll find that so many styles of music really came from this city, and so many great artists have come out of this city. So I don't take it lightly that I'm a part of that in a way, and that I represent that whenever I go out, whenever I perform, because I mean, you're talking about some heavyweights in every genre. I mean, without going and listing the name, but I mean, we could just say Motown by itself.
I was just going to say the influence that Motown had on, I guess, all musicians, well, everywhere, but specifically coming from Detroit. What was that like? Is it kind of the Motown thing is always there? Like, just can you speak a little bit to the influence that label had on the city and like maybe what it still has?
I mean, I think the greatest impact that it had was a sense of pride to know that your culture really influenced the world. musically, you know, and it's still here. I mean, we still listen to any of those classics. I mean, you can put on any classic Motown record and people get up out of their seats to this day in 2021. But it's very much embedded in the framework of what we do. Like, I mean, you can go to any club, any bar, whatever, and you're gonna hear it, and people love it and they appreciate it. But you could say Motown, you could say Jay Dilla, you could say Underground Resistance, you could say the Clark Sisters or the Winans family. Like, I'm covering so many different genres here. You know, Eminem, you know, like more modern, updated. Like, I mean, it's just a lot of heavyweights. And these aren't just heavyweights. These are people that have published a lot of music, you know, a lot of music. So it's not just, oh, it was a flash in the pan. No, these guys have been consistent and they work really hard. So I think the one thing that you can say across the board is that there's an incredible work ethic, deeply ingrained in what musicians and artists do here. We don't slack off, man. We really put our all into it. And, you know, it's a lot of pride in the culture.
I've never played in Detroit, but I did do a gig in Ypsilanti once, which is not too far.
Yeah,
and but I do have a friend, my friend Tony T Money Green. He plays bass. He's a Detroit guy, and he did some work with Snoop Dogg back in the day. And you've also done some work with Snoop. Can you talk about that experience a little bit? You did some arranging for him, is that right?
Oh, we're currently working on a project, and that is as far as I can go with that.
Gotcha.
I am very fortunate to say that I'm working with Snoop, and I'm working with Chaka Khan. Like, that's crazy. Shout out to DJ Battlecat, who's the producer on those records. I can tell you how that situation came about. The producer, DJ Battlecat, who's a legend. Like, a lot of people know Dr. Dre, but there's Dr. Dre and Battlecat. Like, these guys really pioneered that West Coast sound. And he and I were on tour together with the legendary Faith Evans. For those who, so I was working with her for about 3 years. And I think the last year of our tour with her, we were in Aruba. And it was me and DJ Battlecat just sitting back, chilling, you know, sitting, watching the water. And, you know, just have a casual conversation, you know, not even about music. Just, hey, man, just happy to be here. And, you know, rock the shows and just establish like a little bit of a rapport. And then next thing you know, I get a text message like, hey, I got some records for you. Like, we need to get to work. And that's how it goes. So I would encourage a lot of people, a lot of your young people, to just make sure that you maintain good relationships with people, because you never know what doors those relationships might open for you, you know? And I think that's really the thing. It's strictly about good relationships. Be a good person, treat people the way you want to be treated. And if somebody doesn't treat you the nicest, still return kindness to them, because in the long run, that's what's going to yield dividends. You know what I'm saying? So it's strictly relationships. That's how that opportunity came about. And I'm very blessed and very fortunate, you know, to be in that position.
Cool. Thank you.
That's awesome. You kind of touched on it already, but usually when we wrap up the podcast, we ask all of our guests, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to young artists just beginning today, or maybe even a piece of advice to your past self?
I was thinking about that today. You know, I think, man, that's a tough question to ask, but I will impart this to the young people. Explore your passion for your creativity fearlessly. Don't let anything or anybody get in your way. Don't apologize for your creativity. Develop it, because you never know. You might be the next big thing. You know what I'm saying? If you're a visual artist, do that. If you're a dancer, choreographer, do that. If you're a musician or producer, or vocalist, do it. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't have a real career and you can't make real money doing it, because honestly, there are a lot of people out there who make great money and are unhappy. They're miserable. it's better for you to pursue your happiness than it is to pursue wealth and riches, because you can get that, but it's harder to be fulfilled as a human being if you're not doing something that you truly enjoy. So I would say be fearless in your pursuits, and just, man, treat people with love and kindness. I think that's a message that it's cliche, but I think it's really important that we kind of project that even more with today's social climate. And just like treat people with love, because we don't know how long and how much time we have. And also, a lot of people are really hurting right now for a lot of different reasons, whether it's because of the pandemic or because of social unrest. But when you treat people with kindness and you show love and you're an artist, that energy can change the world, period. I'm a firm believer in that. So I think that's what I would impart to people. And then, the last thing is get up on the business, learn business. Because as a musician and as an artist, you are your own business. You are a sole proprietor. So start learning those business skills early and save your money. And, you do well in your 20s, you can coast in your 30s, man. That's a real thing.
Deshaun, you've given
so
some
Deshaun. Wow.
really insightful answers. I got to tell you, it's been really interesting talking to you. I've learned a lot too. It's just, your answers have been fascinating, and thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for reaching out. I mean, I think, Maddie, you reached out to me like a couple of days ago or something, and just boom, boom. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's an honor. I hope that it wasn't too boring,
No.
And hopefully I get a chance to hang out with you guys in Calgary sooner than later.
Yes, please. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Deshaun.
Thank you so much.
Have an amazing rest of your day.
All right. Likewise. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Awesome.